Hello and welcome. I'm Amritanshu Rai and you're watching Law of the Land on Rajya Sabha TV. Today we bring to you the Codes on Wages Bill 2017. To discuss the issue, I have with me Dr. Onkar Sharma, Deputy Chief Labour Commissioner of India, and Mr. Tapan Sen, MP Rajya Sabha and General Secretary C2. Now the highlights. The Code on Wages Bill will ensure minimum wages to one and all workers. The bill proposes 4 labour codes as the fundamental legal structure for workers. The government seeks to bring in transparency, accountability and effective enforcement. The Code on Wages Bill 2017 proposes to fix a national minimum wage for all workers. The government seeks to bring in transparency, accountability and effective enforcement to create employment opportunities.
At present, the provisions of the minimum wages law and the payment of wages law do not cover a substantial number of workers, as these laws are applicable only to scheduled employments and establishments. The proposed Code on Wages Bill will ensure minimum wages to all workers along with timely payment of wages irrespective of the sector of employment.
This act was old Act 1936, 48 whatever. Now with the new Code of Wages Bill takes care of the industry also. And wherever there has been a little bit what we call a labor reforms required, so this bill addresses those points also.
After taking into account the recommendation of the National Commission on Labour and the suggestion made at the tripartite meeting between the government, employers and industry representatives, the Centre has formulated the Code on Wages Bill 2017. The proposed legislation intends to amalgamate and simplify provisions of the 4 central labour enactments relating to wages. These are the Payment of Wages Act 1936, the Minimum Wages Act 1948, the Payment of Bonus Act 1965 and the Equal Remuneration Act 1976. The proposed legislation suggests use of technology to bring in transparency and accountability, which would lead to more effective enforcement. The proposed law also widens the scope of minimum wages to all workers. It facilitates ease of compliance of labour laws and is expected to promote setting up of more enterprises, resulting in creation of employment opportunities.
You know that for the last 20 years, the country has been reforming one or the another sector, but it is labour sector or industrial relations act which there has not been any much reforms in this particular area, and I am extremely happy that the government has initiated the reforms in this particular area, and the act or the provisions that are in the various laws, I think they are not needed.
India has developed a complex labour law structure. There are 53 central laws ranging from those made in the colonial era to the ones legislated in more recent times. As labour laws in the domain of both central and state governments, there are more than 100 state enacted laws. This leads to complexity, overlapping and even non-uniformity. The government has started acting on the simplification of labour laws by drafting specific labour codes. The Code on Wages 2017 was introduced in the Lok Sabha by the Minister of Labour, Mr. Bandaru Dattatreya, on August 10, 2017. Nishtha Malhotra, Rajya Sabha Television.
The bill provides for equal remuneration and payment and bonuses and covers both organized and unorganized sectors. Sir, I'll start the discussion with you, sir. There's a point made by sir relating to exclusion of scheduled entities. Now, you have universalized the entire wages and brought in for all. According to sir, the scheduled entities also need to remain, sir. Is that valid or not?
See, first we have removed the schedule for the purpose of enhancing the scope, covering each and every employee of the country in the scope of the wage code. Second is we have removed the schedule for the coverage purpose, but the wages will not be same, minimum wage will not be same for each and every employment. Based on the nature of work performed by the worker, skill requires and difficulties in performing the work and working conditions, on these basis minimum wage rates will be decided. For different work, it is not that is only one wage rate will be there. Even for the different locations, geographical locations, based on the skills, nature, kind of the skill required, nature of work, there will be different wage rates for the different nature of work performed in the industries. So, it is not that it is will now will be having only one wage rate for each and every employment.
And you're saying this description will come in the guidelines and rules and will not be.
See, that is we are having mechanism of fixation of the wage rate. So, we are having same what we were having in the earlier law, that is committee is there, tripartite committee is to be constituted, tripartite committee will consider all these factors relating to what I have told you while determining the wage rates for the different employments, different categories and also different nature of works.
Right, sir. Sir, on the point of the scheduled entities, do you feel that that's the way to go forward?
You see, a law is a law to be enforced. It does not depend on goodwill or what is in the back of your mind. The law nowhere ensures whatever he made a statement. He may think that this continue, the system will continue. He is here, tomorrow he may not be there. But unless it is put it inside the law, and where the general trend of the employer is not to pay, and as on date, even at the existing level of minimum wages, at least 60% of the workers in the organized sector itself are not getting statutory minimum wages. When that's the reality, so certain provision, if it is to be enforced or to be complied upon, there must be a clear, defined provision in the law.
Is that possible?
So that's the thing. And by rules, it cannot take place because rule is not justiciable. Rule is not justiciable. Rule is to satisfy. When I raise a point, well, that will be taken. When even in Parliament, when you raise a point, we are no, that will be taken care by rule. Don't worry. But that meaningless. My experience in the labor world of work, when the general standard of compliance is that 60% of the workers in the organized sector itself, I am not covering up, touching the unorganized sector, they are not getting even the presently enforceable statutory minimum wage. When this is the scenario, whether you can keep any loose end inside a legislation which is meant for giving, universalizing the right, etc., whatever is being told, no comment on that. But whether you cannot do that, that's the basic issue.
Let me clarify it. We are not living in the rules. In the main body, in the Act itself, we have made the provision that these, what I have told you, these factors are to be considered by the appropriate government while fixing the rates of the wages. So we have not left it for the rules. So what I am saying, I am just telling you what is in the code.
It is not there. Your schedule is not there in the code.
Schedule is not there. How wage will be fixed? Minimum rates of the wages will be fixed.
Problem is that Mr. Sharma, problem is that, of course, you have authored it. The problem is that how minimum wages fixed is written. And you just told that tripartite committee will be deciding. No. Tripartite committee has got no business to decide. And today, as on date, I can cite you at least 10, 12 examples where the tripartite committee recommend something with the chairmanship of the concerned labour minister, and ultimately government did not implement it. So finally the wage fixation remains with the arbitrary discretion of the bureaucrats, not the tripartite committee.
There's also an additional information, sir. You are in the standing committee, sir. I'm sure you are on the judgment side also, and I'm sure you will exercise your judgment there too.
May not be. I mean, maybe on the dissenting side.
Okay. On the unorganized, I'll move on to the next important issue. There's a big concern that the unorganized sector has not been addressed as far as wages are concerned. There's always been some of the other issues of implementation. Do you think this bill really reaches out and includes the unorganized sector and especially the enforcement part?
Yes. First thing, at present, appropriate government, central government and state governments are to decide even the schedule. So there are unorganized workers which are not in the schedule, some employments of unorganized sector which are not in the schedule. Now this law will address it, including each and every category of the employees of the unorganized sector. So first thing is this. Second is, that is, as you in your story you have said, that is transparency and effective enforcement provisions have been made in this law. Very transparent accountability of the enforcement. Second, I'll tell you, even that is instead of inspector, we'll
come to the facilitator part in the next part, sir.
Okay.
Sir, do you think on the unorganized sector, your experience has been phenomenal?
You see, again, I'm telling you.
You have worked in this.
That unless you compel, law is never complied with in our country. There has to be a kind of force. This is a reality. By somebody's goodwill or rousing somebody's conscience, you cannot make the profit seeker people. They will be happiest. They will consider to be the best is of business if they can make people work and need not pay at all.
Right.
So in that situation, you cannot leave anything undefined if you are really serious. But if your program is something else, that you want to show the world that we are doing this and this, you have to keep a loose end for ensuring ease of doing business. You can do that.
Got it, sir. I've got your point, and I also understand.
One minute, number one. Number two, he talked about the modality of fixing the minimum wage. That is also a crucial issue. Now,
it's time for us to head into a break, sir. The government seeks to bring in transparency, accountability and effective enforcement coming up. The Code on Wages 2017 seeks to simplify the existing set of complex laws relating to wages. The bill proposes 4 labour codes as fundamental legal structure for workers. Wages, industrial relations, social security and working conditions are at the fundamentals of the bill.
The Second National Commission on Labour recommended that the existing set of labour laws should be broadly amalgamated under the titles Industrial Relations, Wages, Social Security, Safety and Welfare and Working Conditions. The government has undertaken the exercise of rationalizing 38 labour laws by framing 4 labour codes. These are Code on Wages, Code on Industrial Relations, Code on Social Security and Code on Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions. According to the Code of Wages, the minimum wages decided by the central or state governments cannot be lower than the national minimum wage. The central or state governments will not be able to reduce the minimum wages fixed by them if these wages are higher than the national minimum wage. The bill clearly states that the central government, before fixing the national minimum wage, may obtain the advice of the Central Advisory Board, having representatives from employers, employees and independent persons.
When the environment is more conducive, it helps the economy, and if it helps the economy, it helps the industry. and the workers get benefited in the sense that he will have a social security card out against him, because protection of a job with equality, fairness and transparency are the most important aspects.
The proposed bill specifies penalties for offences committed by an employer, such as paying less than the due wages or for contravening any provision of the code. According to the proposed bill, the person responsible can be punished with fine up to Rs 50,000. In case there is a repeat offence within 5 years, it can lead to imprisonment extending up to 3 months and fine up to Rs 1 lakh or both.
Minimum wage will be decided by the committee, because minimum wage, if a government decides or employer decide, so nobody will be able to agree with that. Always there had been a minimum wage committee. Minimum wage committee have a tripartite negotiation, the government, the employer and the employee. So all their representatives, they sit together and then they decide that what should be the minimum wage.
According to the bill, the central and state governments will constitute their respective advisory boards. These boards will have representation from employees, employers, and independent persons. 1/3 of the total members will be women. The boards will advise the respective governments on fixation of minimum wages and increasing employment opportunities for women. The central government will make wage-related decisions for its authorities and establishments related to railways, mines, and oil fields, among others. State governments will make decisions for any other establishments. Nishtha Malhotra, Rajya Sabha Television.
The provisions relating to timely payment of wages and authorized reductions from wages will be made applicable to all employees irrespective of wage ceiling. Sir, I'll come to you, sir. So you made a point. The first point you made was the recommendation of the advisory committee. The committee is merely advisory and not mandatory. Point number one. And point number two, you also said on the minimum wages aspect, the geographical benefits or the geographical clause will allow other state governments to justify lower minimum wages. These are the 2 points you made, sir. What effectively is going to be the implication of this? Very quickly, sir.
I'll put just 3 bullet points.
Yes, sir.
Number one, it is there written in the bill itself, the advisory, and they are not mandatory.
Correct,
number
sir.
one. Number two, the formulation of the minimum wage is crucial.
Yes.
And he commented that everybody, it is universalized, that everybody in the world of work will get minimum wage. Now, about 1 crore worker working in different central government schemes, Anganwadi, Asha, midday meal. According to them, they are volunteers, not workers. So they should not get statutory minimum wage and social security benefit. Now, on this, the tripartism this government is talking about, this tripartite forum, inaugurated by the respective prime minister of the country at the time of those conferences, they have unanimously recommended that these workers should be treated, scheme workers should be treated as worker and paid statutory minimum wage.
Yes.
Whatever amount of the wage the government may decide, but they should get, number one. Number two, on the minimum wage formulation, a concrete formula based on 2,700 calorie and other requirements. It was further supplemented by a Supreme Court judgment. A concrete scientific formula was evolved, and that formula, it was also unanimously adopted by the Indian Labour Conference, in 44th Indian Labour Conference. Number three, another crucial important point, the Indian Labour Conference's decision about contract worker, that for the same wage they should get the same work.
Correct.
He commented, same wage for same work, doing the same wage, they cannot be different. All the three recommendations, every language was drafted by his office only. We have adopted that, accepted that. the trade union.
Right.
His office on every language. But this was not in your bill. These unanimous recommendations find no place. And finally, it remains at the arbitrary discretion of the persons who are finally issuing the GO, including the minister.
Correct,
so,
sir. Point made,
while
sir.
these things remains, what remains in it?
Sir, would you like to answer that? Because that's the geographical considerations obviously will be able to justify lower minimum wages by the state governments and their committees and things like that.
Presently also, we have not changed it. Even present law, Minimum Wage Act, provides for the different wages on the different geographical locations. But when we will be fixing the national minimum wage, that will take care, no state will be allowed to fix the wages in that particular area or region less than the national minimum wage for that geographical location. Okay. So, this is the already
what is the meaning of that?
Yeah.
Then how it is national? Sharma ji,
yes, sir,
how
please,
it is national?
Please carry on.
It is regional minimum wages, not state minimum wages. What additional force you have added to it?
What we are not doing, that is national for this state, this one, another state, this one, third state is different. What else? National minimum wage also will take into consideration the geographical locations also. Even presently,
so what you are saying is, sir, that the national the committee will also not only frame the national minimum wages but will also fix according to geographical, and that can't be breached.
It can be like this. Like what is it is not here, but what I'm telling possibility that in the metropolitan cities where cost of living is higher, there may be higher wages. We can have the category like city category of A city, B city and rest. Right. There will not be like so many. There can be metropolitan cities and the other big cities, and third, presently like what we are having, the government we are having for the purpose of HRA, payment of the house rent allowance. Right. So, we are having three categories only. In the metro cities, because cost of living is little higher.
Right.
And then we are not going for this kind of this that is put for this area, this will be wage, X area, this will be. It will be pan India, maybe or 2 or 3 categories.
It will vary.
That it will vary.
Sir, I'll come on.
Sir, Bill does not speak about what he is talking about. He has told a probable way of addressing the issue, but Bill does not provide for it.
And what your suggestion is that it should be codified.
Quality of the compliance still as present, these hypothetical things, unless it is clearly defined in Bill,
it will not make sense. I get the point, sir.
Destined to be meaningless for the workers in general.
There is this, moving on, sir, on the earlier labour inspector is now a facilitator, the definition wise, sir. Do you see a real important change in that? And as per the bill?
Yes, definitely.
And how does that help?
We accept, we adopt definitely very important qualitative change in the scenario. The inspector, no more inspector, they are facilitator. They are defined, they are a public servant, they can do, they can get, they can collect, everything. But after doing all these things, they cannot order for recovery, order for compliance. Just as a common worker has to knock the door of the judiciary, these poor facilitators will have to do that, and on them, that big, say secretary level or other officials, they can do that only with their permission. That is the provision, at least in the law, it is there in code on wages bill there, which was not there in the earlier bill.
So that means the facilitator's powers have been taken away. Yes, sir. You can join in.
1 minute.
Yes.
Let me complete. Earlier bill, at least this detail was not there. Earlier bill, they also virtually stopped inspection and enforcement by internal orders. Now they are legitimizing.
Got it, sir. So quickly, sir. Very quickly. Yes, sir.
I'm telling you that is what the existing powers of inspectors conducting inspections and all taking action against the employers, we have not diluted. In addition to the existing responsibilities as inspector, what inspector is having, we have added that is another responsibility, that is to ensure the compliance, to help the employers to comply. How to comply? and also not only he's having responsibility towards the employers, he is to tell also about the law and rights of the workers also. If you see, that his language is employers as well as workers, in addition to the existing powers, responsibilities of enforcement, conducting inspections, and also recovery, and all these we have not diluted.
Right, sir. Moving on, my colleague Nishtha Malhotra spoke to Mr. Rajnish Goenka, founder chairman, MSME Development Forum, to get his point of view.
Sir, what will be the new minimum wages and how will it be fixed?
They will be fixing, once it is approved by the parliament, a certain minimum wage, let's say 18,000 rupees. So it will be across India, throughout the country, and states will have the liberty to change it, but they cannot go lower than the minimum wage fixed by the central government. They can certainly have higher than that, you know. So in any case, it's going to benefit.
Sir, how this bill will benefit the working professionals of various industries?
It may not benefit that much, as much government is expecting to benefit the either the industry or the working class, because the industry looks at it as another license Raj ordinance.
Thank you, sir, for joining us on this discussion. It's time for us to end the show. You can email your suggestions and comments to law.rstv@gmail.com. You can also watch our shows on the RSTV page of YouTube. We'll be back with a new issue and a new episode. Keep watching Raj Sabha TV.